What's good, YouTube? We're talking college sports in the Deep South, where college football is king. All right, we're talking a little bit about J.B. Grimes today. We have to make mention of, Auburn football last year taking a step back offensively. Surprisingly, in the Gus Malzahn era, we never would have thought that there would be a situation where Gus Malzahn's offense really is not as productive as, times past. Of course, I would think having all of the pieces in place to make it happen just didn't. Then we start to kind of dissect as to why it didn't happen. Well, number one, you didn't have the dual threat quarterback in Jarrett Stidham that looking at video footage of him, I never thought of him as a true dual threat quarterback anyway. At the same time, you look at the pieces around him. You talk about Boobie Whitlow, mostly a dual threat quarterback in high school, probably in a different situation, might not have even wound up at Auburn anyway, but it's turned into a gym for the Auburn Tigers. Not a gymnasium, but a gym as in a rare commodity, considering the origin of his beginning. Played football at 2A Lafayette, Alabama High School. But either way, when you look at this whole situation in 2018, a very uncharacteristic situation for Gus Malzahn and his staff, taking a huge step back offensively, probably in epic proportion compared to what Gus Malzahn has been able to produce during his tenure at Auburn. One, no 1,000-yard rusher. Something that hasn't happened in a long time. Now, I'll go down a limb and say if Jartarvius Boobie Whitlow wouldn't have gotten injured with 700 plus yards, I think without injuries, he probably would have got in the early thousands, maybe 1,100 at the worst. But either way, nonetheless, the offense took a major step back in 2018. We talk about a very non-glorified position on the football field, which is the offensive line position. One thing about the offensive line position is that as long as things are going great, you stay out of the spotlight. You're never going to be in the spotlight anyway unless things go wrong. You don't produce a 1,000-yard rusher, your offense goes backwards. Guess who's to blame? The offensive line. Today's spotlight, we're going to be talking about J.B. Grimes, who was very responsible for some of the better offensive outputs in Auburn recent history. 2013, for example, one of the better outputs ever. You talk about a 1,000-yard rusher at quarterback, 1,800 yards at the running back position. Auburn clicking on all cylinders, producing, NFL caliber offensive linemen. Now we fast forward here to 2018. Potential there. You talk about Prince Tega Wanagu, one of the better athletes on the field, Jack Driscoll, whom we've talked about as well. One thing about, J.B. Grimes is he has the unique task of piecing together a very veteran offensive line, and hopefully that will translate into what could possibly be a special season for the Auburn Tigers. Now, when I talk about a special season, I don't talk about a guaranteed SEC West championship. I don't talk about, a national championship appearance. I'll talk about an offensive line that can help create some opportunities for the Auburn Tigers. Early in the season, very, very inconsistent. As the season goes on, you started to see the solidarity. You started to see the consistency with the offensive line. J.B. Grimes has a interesting knack of making these things happen from a coaching standpoint. This year, he has a solid unit. Outside of injury, I think Auburn's offensive line will be one of the more experienced and the more skilled offensive units in the SEC, contrary to what some of the contrarians of the Auburn fan base may believe. These guys actually improved down the stretch. And these guys showed some potential to be able to perform at an elite level in the SEC. So, with all of that in mind, JB Grimes is on the spotlight to where we want to see how much more from a developmental standpoint this offensive line can go from mediocre for the most part, especially in the first half of the season. I'll even make a note that the offensive line never performed at the level that they performed in the LSU game. I think the team, period, from an intensity standpoint, really started to take a step backwards after that loss to LSU. It's kind of strange how little things can, kind of convert the trajectory of a season. And that's why we got to look at this. People keep talking about, okay, Oregon is not a must-win game. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is, because in the SEC where wins are just hard to come by, you got to win them. You got to win all the winnables. And I believe that Oregon is a winnable game. Do I think it's just in the bag? No. Oregon comes to this situation with a lot of great moving parts. A great quarterback, a great running back. I'm going to do a video pretty soon on the secondary for the Oregon Ducks. Arguably one of the more elite secondaries I know in the Pac-12. I can't speak for the Power 5 at large, but I've looked at these guys and I've studied these guys on video footage. Oregon's secondary is pretty elite, or at least at the beginning of elite status. So you got a lot of things going to where Auburn has some challenges coming into the 2019 season. I think Oregon will be good. You talk about Justin Herbert as a dark horse Heisman candidate. You talk about C.J. Verdell, who is a pretty serviceable running back. The wide receivers, we're looking for the wide receivers at Oregon to be much improved. So, where do we go from here? J.B. Grimes, as an offensive line coach, has the toughest task as far as turnaround of any coach in the SEC, in my opinion, because his team was at the burnt end of all criticism as to why the Auburn offense did not click. Coaching will be important. I will go out on a limb and say the center and the two guards are the place of reference. All the breakdowns, most of the breakdowns took place right in the middle. So Caleb Kim, that's going to be an important role. Who will be the center? Because the center in the run-pass option offense is asked to do a lot. And Caleb Kim's physicality is going to be very important coming into this season. I think he will be up to the task. He's got a year of experience of getting whooped all season in 2018. And that will translate. Because one thing about experience, usually, bad experience can translate into epic performance later on. And I'm hoping that will be the case for Caleb Kim. Because he is going to be, I actually featured him as one of the impact players for Auburn. He's going to be, if he's going to play that center position, he's going to have to be the one that makes it happen. JB Grimes, y'all, back on the plains, came back last year, coming back to coach the offensive lineman for Auburn Tigers. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. We talk Auburn football all day long. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger here on this channel. On the plains of Auburn, the battle cry is War Eagle. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, War Eagle.